Well, hello again, my friend. This is your final video check-in. We're in the home stretch now on the course. Ms. Cami and I are taking a look at the challenge assignments daily. Just have a few rhetorical précis to grade so far, so we're getting a little anxious that you're all going to leave it till the very, very, very last minute, and there's going to be this like huge avalanche of rhetorical précis in any event. Many of the deadlines for the challenge assignments have shut down, so you're not going to be able to go back and submit something if after the deadline is due. Uh, Again, if you wait until the last minute, you won't get any feedback on your rhetorical précis. Plus, if we have hundreds of challenge assignments and précis to grade, as well as exams, you'll wait a little while for your grades. So those are just the facts. It's not a warning or a threat or anything. It's just a fact. So I'm introducing you to the module of fairy tales, and it was a very interesting module, I thought. Um, of course, Disney pretty much framed my growing up in Edmonton, Alberta, and we went to see every Disney movie that was available. My first memory is Bambi. Um, Playing on the worst fears of children, right? Parental abandonment. And I think maybe my second movie was Dumbo. I'm not sure. But Disney movies in a way are very disturbing movies, right? I mean, they sort of they tap into these kinds of fears and anxieties of child that you have in childhood, and of course are quite notorious for the Western heteronormative kind of canon that they represent. When I became a grandmother, I determined I would never buy a Disney princess dress for any of my grandchildren or make anything like that, and I've kind of stuck to that. But it doesn't matter, it's an insidious kind of culture, and they get their hands on them anyways. But at least one can talk critically to children about what it is that those kinds of artifacts are representing, whether they to understand that at the time or not. In this module, again, we're bringing in ideas from other modules and scaffolding them. For instance, you'll be familiar with some of the discussion about fashion and heteronormativity, about religion and spirituality, which doesn't show up overtly very often in Disney films, but certainly underlies a lot of the story. Today, or right now, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about grandmother archetypes because we haven't looked at that. And grandmothers show up a lot in fairy tales. So I want to read you a piece that I found on the internet. It's in WordPress about the 5 archetypes of grandmothers and the Great Mother. I think you'll find it interesting. The Great Mother is the source of life, and as such, she's depicted in 3 persistent images. 2 of her key images flow from her identification with nature as Mother Earth. First, we find her as images of fertility, the womb, the soil, the internal and mysterious spring of life. Second, as transformation, the seasonal round of nature which frames our own personal birth and death, and which is clearly expressed in the Navajo changing woman. Third, she is the source of life. The Great Mother is also identified with women as mother or as another feminine ancestor. As the mother of mother or grandmother, she appears as mentor, tutor, and bestower of magical gifts on both men and women in folk tales from around the world. In Native American tales, the grandmother is an especially key figure, and here we find her as the most humanized depiction of the Great Mother, as the gentle and kindly, if exacting person who teaches us to get along in the world. In European stories, this mother of mother is often simply an old woman, whom the heroes in Eastern European tales refer to respectfully as grandmother when they encounter her. In Russian tales, she is often the wily Baba Yaga, who lives by herself and sets seemingly impossible tasks for those who seek her advice or are kidnapped by her. Though her name is sometimes translated as witch, Baba is actually the Russian term for grandmother, and she is far from mean-spirited. Nevertheless, she does stick to her own rules to the point of eccentricity and sometimes to the point of destruction of those who cannot appropriately perceive, and navigate those rules, but for those who can manage them, there are quite incredible rewards. In many folk tales from Europe and tales from around the world, the old woman simply appears on the path of the hero to give essential counsel, which she sometimes gives as a matter of course and other times withholds until some sort of test is passed. Interestingly, such a test often indicates the hero's ability to recognize, accept, and value the old woman herself. If she appears as ugly, frail, or diseased, the protagonist is expected to honor and value her power nonetheless, as well as to experience her as attractive. The Good Mother and the Terrible Mother. Light and shadow. The good mother and the terrible mother are both essential and related aspects of the same archetype. The good mother is not only beneficent, life-sustaining, generous, and ever-renewing of herself and the world around her, she is the other face of the terrible mother, who is relentless in exacting the death of those whose time has come. And in this aspect she appears as those weavers, the Fates, in Mediterranean and Eastern European folk tales. Of course, the trope of the bad mother, the terrible mother, is one of those cultural discourses that follows women around in practically every aspect. Mummy blogs being one of the latest. As terrible mother, she is not merely cold, but awful in her destructiveness. Mythology expresses this fearful face of the great mother as the devouring mother, the cannibal woman of some northwestern Native American tales, or the witch who eats children in European stories. The association of witches with the actual women who were assigned the title of witch and then killed by the millions in the 16th and 17th centuries of the modern era should be clearly understood. The witches who were burned at the stake were the traditional wise women, midwives, and herbalists of local peasant communities during this period. As community servants, they bore little actual resemblance to the satanic witch, image of the witch burning furor. Moreover, the folklore witch herself, as with Baba Yaga, is far from an entirely negative figure in the traditional European folklore. Although she is terrifying, it is often her function to test and then gift a folklore hero. Indeed, Kali, the devouring mother of East Indian tradition, is truly honored and revered by those who tell her stories. This tradition does not honor her destructiveness, but accepts her power, and importantly her necessity as an aspect of the Great Mother. So again we encounter the idea of power. Even as nurturance and power are so intrinsically linked in the Great Mother archetype in folklore throughout the world, the repression of the archetype has profound consequences, not only for the ways in which we express nurturance and place nurturers within our society, but also for the ways in which we conceive of and enact social power. We have numerous examples of societies that consciously express the Great Mother archetype in stories, beliefs, and ceremonials. Such societies also tend to link power and nurturance in their cultural values and social structures. In these societies, nurturant behavior on the part of both men and women is a highly valued cultural ideal, and authority is linked not with power over others, but with service and caretaking. We also see in these cultures, which, let's face it, have basically represent the predominant mode of human life for the past 100,000 years anyways, a striking respect for individual identity and individual psychological development. Societies in which nurturance and power are linked are also those in which no one speaks for anyone else, as members of so many Native American groups assert. And Canadian, of course. And no one would presume to determine the choice of action of another. So another archetype in global culture, basically, gender-based archetype of grandmother. The research on grandmothers in folktales and in history is quite fascinating, and lately lots written about grandmothers as activists, for example, the Raging Grannies. So I urge you, if you've got time and interest, to take a look at some of the activities of grandmother activists around the world. So enjoy this module on fairy tales. Please get working on those challenge assignments and the rhetorical précis. Remember that your final exam will be open on June the 14th, and I'm going to extend the period where you can work on it. Now, working on your final exam doesn't mean you have to sit down for 3 hours all at once and complete the activities in that exam. You can do something, get up, come back to it. You can stretch that over a number of days as long as you submit the exam by the deadline. When the exam deadline closes, no more exams will be accepted. So, enjoy these next two modules. There's no video check-in for module 12. And, well, I'll look forward to reading your précis and seeing what you do on your final exams. Although we haven't met, it's been a pleasure to have you in the class. Of course, email me or Stephanie any questions you have about the final exam or feedback that you're getting, and we'll be happy to respond to you. Bye-bye.